you're saying we're uncovering more and more. How would you, in ordinary lay terms, how would you describe the FBI as an institution in regards to Fred Hampton, but as an institution in this country for 100 years? How do you describe the FBI?
Well, you look at the history, and the first 60 or so years is synonymous with J. Edgar Hoover. And of course, J. Edgar Hoover started the FBI, and before even there was an FBI per se, he was in the Justice Department leading the Palmer raids back in 1919. And that's how the focus of the FBI, as Hoover took it over or created it, focused on the left, focused on Black liberation folks like Marcus Garvey back in that day.
That's
and
right.
then you trace it. You trace it up through what they did against the Communist Party, what they did against the Socialist Workers' Party in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s. And then you come to us. You come to us, and you come to the Panthers, and you come to SDS and the Weathermen, and all of a sudden, and of course before that, and most seriously, you come to Martin Luther King and Stokely Carmichael and Rap Brown and Malcolm X, Elijah Muhammad. And those were the people that Hoover and the COINTELPRO program in the 60s targeted. And when I say targeted, people think of the FBI as crime solving, perhaps, if they're not really educated about what it's really all about. And then the next level you think about is surveillance. But COINTELPRO was, and its derivatives are, beyond either crime fighting or surveillance. It's about disruption and ultimately destroying primarily Black liberation organizations, particularly back in the 60s when they targeted the leaders that I mentioned and their organizations. And then it dovetailed as the Panthers became a force in the late 1960s to focus on the Black Panthers. And as the Church Committee found in 1976, that COINTELPRO was to focus on destroying the Black Panther Party.
Right, right. So you go back to the beginning, the Palmer raids, for folks who don't know, were raids on largely immigrant communities, socialists, and deporting people in large numbers back to Italy, back to Germany, back to wherever they'd come from. So it's a long and sordid history. But then you come more recently and you see former Director Comey apologizing for certain kinds of things. How do you take that in? How do you understand that?
Well, I guess it's easier to apologize for things that happened 50 years ago than to look and try to deal with what's going on now. Comey is a kind of a complex figure. It's easy to see him in a light of the good guys in a way, because he spoke out against Trump and all of that. But then you look at his history back with the Justice Department back when they were dealing in the wake of 9/11 and the repression and all the way to Guantanamo and the torture and the waterboarding that was going on. Comey had kind of a weak voice, I think, against some of that, but nonetheless, that all went on. And so you have to really look at the FBI now only and primarily in light of that history that you and I have been talking about.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I think sometimes a person like Comey, as you say, because of the recent, he gets a little gloss because of the attacks he's under from Trump. I was saying this the other day about Merrick Garland. You know, Garland looks good because he was attacked so, viciously by the people who prevented him from being Obama's nomination to the Supreme Court. But if you look at Garland's record or Comey's record, for me, when Dylann Roof shot up the church and killed all those people in South Carolina, Comey just let it pass. I mean, he didn't call that terrorism, and yet he was on the path of everybody else is a terrorist, except for the white supremacists. So Yeah, I have a real problem making that pivot. And yet here we are, right? I mean, a white supremacist insurrection takes place in the Capitol. Um, and how do we name this moment? How do we understand that?
Again, I look back in another phase of the work that we have done, and that is the work in Greensboro, North Carolina, back in the late 70s and early 80s. And of course, the Klan and the Nazis had a real union at that time, and there was a grouping of various white supremacist organizations in the late 70s, and they attacked the Klan and the anti-fascist demonstrators in Greensboro in November of 1979. And I thought back on that, and when I was in that moment, I was thinking back and understanding and gathering evidence together of what the FBI and the Klan did in the 60s with regard to the civil rights movement, with regard to informants that were basically running the Klan in the South, in the fact that police and the FBI during that era would turn their backs on the Klan, whether it be at the bus station in Birmingham or other violence, the murders of Viola Luiso, where in fact one of the murderers was an FBI informant provocateur. And you look at all of that, and you look at what happened in Greensboro, and what we uncovered there was it wasn't just the Klan, and it wasn't just the Nazis and all the white supremacists who were coming together in not so different a fashion as they are now. But they didn't have a social media. It wasn't as much a national phenomenon because there wasn't that kind of ability to organize nationally at that point. But it turns out the Greensboro police turned their backs on it. The FBI turned their backs on it. And they had an FBI informant provocateur who led the caravan into the housing project where the demonstration was. So we look at that. Then we look at Charlottesville. Here we are again. And so when I look at it through the lens of my, and I'm sure it goes back farther, but my understanding and coming to grips with the history starts in the 60s with the collaboration not only of fascist and white supremacist groups, but the collaboration with police informants, FBI informants, and as you could say, the whole 9 yards that we're looking at here today. And we have not plumbed the depths of all of this, right? We see the surface right now in terms of the police, the Capitol Police, for example. We don't know yet who among those crazies inside were informants. We don't know how much those informants had told their various police agencies and federal agencies what was going to happen. All of that may be still being discovered 50 years from now, like we're discovering still the depth of the Fred Hampton case.
Well, one of the things, when people describe the People's Law Office, which is your law office and one of an absolutely stellar institution in Chicago, built by young lawyers 50 years ago. How many years ago? Is it 50?
51 now.
Yeah, I was at the 50th anniversary celebration. But that law office, when people describe it, they always say dogged. That is a dogged group of lawyers. And I love that word because it reminds me of a dog with a bone. And I've never seen anyone as persistent as you in pursuing justice on a case like the Fred Hampton case. 50 years later, you're still pursuing it. And the John Burge case, and so many others.